For every culture, there's an equivalent of the underworld, whether it's hell, Gehenna, the Elysian Fields, or 𝐦𝐤𝐤. There's always someplace nasty that houses all the evil ones or have angered the gods, and the Egyptian culture is no different. In their mythology, you're given a chance at a life in the field of reeds, where you'll spend the rest of eternity happily. That is, of course, if Ammit doesn't devour your unworthy soul. But who, or what, is this Ammit? Join us as we find out, and more on why she's called the Devourer of the Dead, among other hair-raising names. Ammit, otherwise known as Ammut or 𝐿𝐸𝐻, was the personification of divine retribution. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Ammit was a greatly feared female creature that was depicted as having the head of a crocodile, torso and forearms of a feline, mostly a lion or leopard, and the bottom half of a hippopotamus. Many times, she also took the form of a human. She was usually pictured sitting beside the scales of Ma'at, ready to devour the souls for all the wrongs committed in life. To put this in perspective, if you lived in ancient Egypt, in a world of gods and pharaohs, who themselves were linked to gods, the topic of the afterlife was a great concern for you. One of the biggest concerns about life after death would be the fate of your soul. Would you ascend the ladder to heaven, held by the good god, 𝐦𝐤𝐤? Or would you be condemned to suffer eternally as a wandering spirit in a land of demons, existing only as a remnant of your soul? Your greatest concern after death would be about your judgment before the god Osiris, the weighing of your deeds against the feather of Ma'at, and a terrifying creature waiting to devour you. This creature, as you may have guessed, is Ammit, the Devourer of the Dead. Ammit's appearance was one that struck the hearts of those who were to be judged by the god Osiris, as she was represented by a collection of 3 of the largest man-eating animals on the planet that were feared by Egyptians at the time. This revered mythical creature, whose name was also spelled as Ammit, Amhemet, Aman, or Amemet, was an encapsulation of what the Egyptians at that time feared the most: an afterlife of damnation, cursed to wander the underworld for all eternity, and being devoured by a man-eating creature. The ancient Egyptian meaning of her name. Ammit and her several name variations in spelling and pronunciations mean one thing literally: devourer. And this was the basis for several titles she acquired, like Eater of Souls, Eater of Hearts, the Devourer of the Dead, Greatness of Death, Demoness of the Underworld, Devourer of Millions, Bone Eater, Dweller or Devourer of Amenta, and Demoness of Death. The name Devourer of Millions has led to the suggestion that the god Emhe was one of her physical representations. Some scholars of ancient Egyptian mythology have linked Ammit with Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess, because of their likeness in appearance and their common role in fighting against all forms of evil. In most Egyptian traditions, she lived by the scales of justice, umpired by Osiris. But other sources claim that she, like Amhe, lived by the lake of fire into which the souls found wanting were thrown. According to people who believe in this narrative of her, she didn't really devour the souls, but protected the lake. This also meant that she was linked to Sekhmet, one of the oldest Egyptian deities, due to her lion-like characteristics and her role in safeguarding the lake of fire. Her role in the judgment after death. When a person died, the ancient Egyptians believed that their soul would journey to the Hall of Two Truths, where it would face judgment. Although Osiris presided over the proceedings along with 42 gods who sat in judgment, each reading off the soul's denial for each type of sin. After the denials have been read, the dead person's heart would be set on a scale and weighed against a divine feather, usually depicted as an ostrich feather found on the headdress of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was deemed fit to transcend to heaven. If the heart weighs more than the feather, the person's soul is condemned. The heart and the soul attached to it is fed to Ammit, who is sitting eagerly at the base of the scales for any tasty morsel of fresh souls. Having your heart eaten by the devourer of souls was referred to as the second death, which meant that the person's soul would not be allowed to continue their journey towards immortality in the afterlife and would roam and become restless forever. For those who see Ammit as the great protector of the lake of fire, unworthy souls were simply cast into the fiery lake to be consumed. Though she was called a demon, she is not evil. The ancient Egyptians must be thankful that Osiris was not too harsh, and one of the prosecutors, Thoth, was a pretty enlightened being, else many souls would have been cast into damnation without getting a chance to prove they were worthy of a blissful afterlife. Some scholars, however, believe that a person doesn't have to be totally good to pass this divine test. The heart just has to be reasonably balanced, that is, having committed more good than evil to be able to weigh less or just as much as the feather of Ma'at. There were also a couple of spells and amulets the deceased could use to sway the judgment in their favor. One of the other ways of making it into the House of Reeds, the Egyptian equivalent of heaven, was to have prior knowledge of the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead was a protective guide that provided the correct ways of addressing gods of the world, and hence on how to answer any questions or persuade the gods that they had committed no wrongdoing while alive. If they failed to answer these questions correctly or use the right responses, it meant that they had lived a sinful life, and you know what that means for their souls. The texts from the book were also interred with the dead to ensure they evaded the punishment and execution of Ammit. While Ammit is sometimes classified as one of the ancient Egyptian gods, she is more accurately assigned the role of a demon or a sinister goddess of the underworld, which, when you think about it, doesn't absolutely paint the full picture of her. She could be called the patron of death and execution. Once she devoured the Ba, the physical manifestation of the soul that could wander but also needed to climb the ladder to heaven and become immortal, represented as a bird, hawk with a human head that symbolizes the dead. Ka, the other part of the soul, is the life force of the soul. When both are combined, they produce the divine spark of life, known as the 𝐦𝐤𝐤. The thought of having one soul, Ba, devoured by a monster depicted by 3 fierce animals, leaving them a fragment of a soul, sent chills down the spine of many ancient Egyptians. How she was worshipped. Egyptian gods like Osiris, Mafdet, Anubis, and other more popular gods have cult-like followership. For Osiris, his followers prayed to him and made sacrifices of a variety of animals in his name. These worships were also done by dedicating their lives to learning about Osiris in the hope of becoming immortal. While for a lesser god, like Mafdet, sacrifices were made in temples with lotus flowers and incense burners. However, unlike these other Egyptian gods and deities, Ammit was never worshipped. She wasn't strictly a goddess, not entirely a demon, but her image was thought to ward off evil. Ammit was the personification of all the ancient Egyptians feared and a constant reminder for them to live by the principles and laws of Ma'at. Although many referred to her as a demon, she was actually a force of order, maintaining the balance of the underworld. Moreover, since each person was at least given a chance to defend their life before being co-signed to eternal damnation, it's safe to say she was one fair god, acting on the order of a more superior being. Well, we've come to the end of another interesting time on our channel. We do hope you enjoyed the video as much as we did bringing it to you. Do you see any truth in all that has been said about Ammit? What are your thoughts and opinions about her? Be sure to let us know in the comments section below. And hey, don't forget to hit that like button as well as subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.